What about the hosts of Saturday Night Live? Who were the best? Who should be asked? It's time to discuss and rank the host of Saturday Night Live on the third episode of Saturday Night Review, and that starts now!
Live from Nipso Production Studios in the heart of America, it's Saturday Night Review, a podcast dedicated to the television show Saturday Night Live. With your hosts, Joseph and Dennis. And here's Denis.
Oh, yes! Yes! Welcome, one and all, to the third episode of Saturday Night Review. He is Joseph.
And he is Dennis, and he sounds fine as hell.
Yeah! And this is YouTube podcast devoted to one of our favorite shows of all time, Saturday Night Live. And we figured the third time is always a charm, right, Josephina?
That's how it works when I try on pants, anyway.
Oh, isn't that the truth? Isn't that not the truth? And we can't let our almost 30 viewers down now, can we?
30? Really? 30?
Yeah, 30.
Self-esteem boost?
Yes. And Grandma has friends, apparently.
Apparently.
Before we start, I do have something new I want to share with all of you. We do, we tell something that we think is mildly amusing. You may hear a drum, ba-dum-bump, which is known in the business as a rim shot. And I don't want to go further with that. But as the rim shot from the last couple of shows has been kind of generic, I thought, well, this is Saturday Night Live, so who better to do our rim shot than Ferricito? So from now on, our rim shots will sound like this. Thank you very much, Ferricito. Character from Fred Armisen, if you don't know.
Yes. Was that like the Tito Puente kind of like
it
almost
was
like riff on?
It certainly was. Riff on, riff off. Yes, it was.
Armisen,
so, Joseph, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good, man. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Happy Labor Day. We're recording on Labor Day.
Absolutely, yeah. So we've only got, about 3 weeks until the actual premiere of SNL for the 44th season?
Yes, Saturday Night Live, September 29th. We'll be talking about that coming up. But before we do that, why don't you tell the rare listener what they can expect on this episode of Saturday Night Review?
Simple. We do what we usually do around here. We compile a list between you and I of 5 of something, and this 5 of something this week on this week's episode happens to be the 5 best hosts that we have seen host Saturday Night Live. Within that category, though, or kind of aside from that category, we're also looking at 5, get this, 5 people that haven't hosted that we would like to see host sometime in the future, possibly this season. I think there's somebody on my list who's rumored to possibly host this season, so that's just to the grapevine. But, I mean, you're the one with the connections between all the scandals and hiding out in people's dressing rooms and all that jazz. So you tell us.
I am doing all that, yes. Would you like to take a look at the news right now?
Let's take a look at the news, man.
Let's take a look at the SNL news. All right, SNL in the news. Thank you, Joseph. And yes, it is time for the Saturday Night Review news. Where we look out into the real world and find tasty little treats of SNL rumor, news, and scandal. Brought to you this episode by Colon Blow and new Super Colon Blow cereal. Warning, may cause abdominal distension. Call a physician. All right, our first story. Joseph, it finally happened.
You reserved that wine and canvas for both of us?
No, not yet. We finally have an official date for the show, though. The first show of the new season, September 29th.
Yes.
So get excited. I said
Very
the first.
Excited.
Hey, September 29th. Yeah, there they are. September 29th. Wake up. A new episode of Saturday Night Live will start September 29th. Mark your calendars. After that show will be our next episode, episode 4. And we'll actually review a Saturday Night Live show. So get ready for that.
Yeah, so if you thought the first 3 episodes were mediocre, then the next ones are bound to be at least halfway decent. So tune in.
Get ready for that.
Tune in.
The mediocrity is going to be raised. And also, back on August 27th, about 2 weeks after we decided to do this show on this date with this topic, SNL on Twitter tweeted out, "Hey, who should host Saturday Night Live?" I think they're listening to us.
Somebody out there is, God.
Yeah, and they're coming through the window right now. They received over 10,000 replies, but you know what? It doesn't matter what they think. It doesn't matter what people think. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks, because we are going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to share with you, the Saturday Night Review listener, exactly who we think are the best top 5 Saturday Night Live hosts of all time, and we definitely want you to be part of that. We'll be right back after this.
Bye.
You are so street. It's unbelievable.
Street. Is that like code for gang?
No, I did not say that.
Code for urban.
You're so street.
You are watching and listening to Saturday Night Review on the Nipso Productions YouTube channel.
That was awesome.
They're friendly. They're personable.
Yeah, I like that.
They take my HSA card, which is always a good thing.
Always a good advantage.
And
you got to have that.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess to answer your question, those are probably the most professional escorts that I've ever encountered personally.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I can't wait to... Oh, wait a minute. Oh, God, we're rolling. We're rolling!
And we're back. And thank you for hanging on to the 3rd episode of the Saturday Night Review. We want to hear what you think. So if you want to give us your thoughts, comments, please comment on the video below, or we would love to have you email us at nipsoproductions@gmail.com and let us know what you think. Also, we're coming up with these kind of filler episodes, the titles, the themes, the topics, kind of as we go along. And we've kind of planned some of those out a little bit in advance, right, Dennis?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, but I think it would be really, really good if we got some input from the audience members, just to hear what they would like us to talk about or what they would like to comment on. So please be sure to do that in the video below or at nipsoproductions@gmail.com and let us know what you think.
Brilliant idea.
Yeah. So we're going to reveal who Dennis and I thought might possibly be the top 5 SNL hosts of all time. And of course, a little bit, and I just do mean a little bit meaning like we got online, we got on Goliath.com, we looked at an article from March 28th, 2016 entitled 10 Best SNL Hosts of All Time. And this is what they said their top 5 was. Starting at number 5, Paul Simon, which I want to say he's part of the 5 Timers Club, I think. And he's only 5 Timers.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So number 4, Tom Hanks.
Also 5-timer.
Also 5-timer.
Nice.
3, more than 5-timer. I don't know how many timer, though. Maybe you can go in your brainium and figure out if you can recall. John Goodman. How many times? What is it? 12, 13?
A lot.
For some reason, the number 13 comes up for me. But we'll have Linda fact check that. Linda's a fictional character that produces our show. That makes it sound a little
Linda,
legit.
get going.
I'm on that.
12 times. 12 times. Sorry.
12 times. Thank you, Linda.
One behind Alec Baldwin and Steve Martin, I believe.
Okay, so that brings me to number 2. Number 2 was Steve Martin. Can't go wrong with Steve Martin. Although I would like to know when the last time Steve Martin hosted. I want to say it was with Alec Baldwin in 2010.
I think so.
Right? Or no,
yeah,
no,
I think
no,
they
no,
both did it.
Did they? No, I'm thinking of the Golden Globes. They did the Golden Globes together, didn't they? Or did they?
Yes.
I don't know. Linda, check us out on that.
Linda's going to work on that too.
And number 1, according to the Goliath.com article, March 28, 2016, is Alec Baldwin.
Ta-da!
And God, I mean, Alec Baldwin. You know, I've seen in interviews, and he says that he's not a comedic person. He doesn't necessarily know what he's doing. He just does the best that he can, and like it's the writers that make him funny. And I have a hard time believing that because I find him incredibly, incredibly funny.
Well, and when he first did it, that was what was so amazing, that he was so good in it because he was at that point a serious, a non-comedic actor. And back in the 80s, I remember he did a skit with Jan Hooks at the diner that is maybe one of my favorite skits. I'm laughing just thinking about this skit where he comes in and he wants pie, and it's the funniest thing. I mean, that skit is so brilliant, and he was perfect in it. And that's when a lot of people turned heads and said, wow, this guy can do this. And to me, Joseph, I know you're going to have your list, but to me, it's the people that you don't expect to be funny, that are hysterical, that really add points on their they're hosting for me. People who aren't supposed to be funny that are just hysterical.
Right.
That's a big plus for me.
Right. And so, okay, so I'm going to give you my list, but I want to make a comment about that. But I almost want to wait until I give you my list or you give me your list, because there's something to be said about that. There's there's almost like a Goldilocks, like middle ground, in my opinion, for people like that. But I want to see what you put on your list. And then, of course, give the viewers, the listeners, what is on my list. So number five, I don't have anybody on that list from Goliath.com. I have Justin Timberlake, JT. JT, I think, is I want to say he's a 5-timer. There was an episode, I think, on his 5th episode.
I believe he is a 5-timer.
Yeah, and all the other 5-timers like Paul Simon, Chevy Chase.
Yes.
They came out and they kind of did a skit with him during his monologue. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
So JT, he's just, to me, he strikes me as someone who's game for anything.
Yes.
And he takes what they write and he just, he makes it his own, man. He makes it his own. Number 4, Melissa McCarthy. I want to say.
Nice.
Is here's what Melissa McCarthy, here's the characteristic I really like about her. She almost, and I'm not talking about the physicality of her, but she almost reminds me of like a Farley in the way that she is very physical with her comedy.
Yes.
She's so physical. And she will just go balls out on every skit that she can. And she gives it her all, and she'll do just about anything for a laugh. And most of the time, when I've watched her, she's always gotten a laugh from me. So I'm going to put Melissa McCarthy at number 4.
I would like to say that her opening recently, where she had her shoes and she couldn't get off the stage because of her shoes,
yes,
was maybe one of the best openings I've ever seen.
Right.
So, yeah. Congrats on that. That was amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I thought you might like that.
Yeah.
Number 3 is actually from the list. I have Hanks at number 3.
Mm-hmm.
I have Hanks at number 3. And I'm going to wait till my number 1 to give that comment that I said I'd give you earlier. Number 2, one of my favorite people, Dennis, and you think you might know who I'm going to say. I love her. You love her. Her name's Tina Fey. Ever heard of her?
I've heard of Tina Fey, yes.
Yeah, she's been around. So Tina Fey, I think, has also, I'm sorry, man, I know she's hosted at least 4 times. I don't know if she's part of the 5-timers, but I know she's at least hosted at least 4 times since her stint on SNL and then 30 Rock and then post 30 Rock success.
6 times.
6 times?
Yeah.
Nice. And then, of course, number 1, I honestly had Alec Baldwin. And that was before I found out that he hosted 17 times already.
Wow, is it that many already?
17 times. So here's what I'm going to say about Baldwin. I've been watching SNL for a little while. Kind of caught onto it in the 90s. But I remember when I was a kid seeing on Comedy Central, and when they aired it on Comedy Central, they even put the disclaimer on it, and it was the Canteen Boy skit. Do you remember Canteen Boy?
Oh, yes. Yes.
They got in a little bit of hot water for that.
They did.
And so, and then, fast forward to 97, where he was with Shannon and was it Anna Gasteyer, and he was doing those sweaty balls.
The sweaty balls.
And that, cracked me up. But I wanted to make this note about what you said in terms of it's the people you least expect, like him. And I would almost put Hanks in that arena with him. But here's the thing. So I'm thinking of Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro, when you see him host, and he's hosted a couple times, and you're so intrigued by what he can do, only to find out, in my opinion, his timing's a little off. But he's such a phenomenal actor, like Hanks, like Baldwin. But it just goes to show you that not everyone has that range, not everyone has that capability. And those 2 guys are on my list for that reason. They're phenomenal actors dramatically. They can be, and they have been. But they also have the range to be very, very funny. So, Alec Baldwin's my number 1.
Yeah. Well, I remember Tom Hanks back in Bosom Buddies days. He had a sitcom. You ever hear of Bosom Buddies? That's way back in the 70s.
Was it Peter Scolari who did that?
No, who did he do it with? I don't remember the guy he did it with. But there was the idea where they dressed up like girls to live in a boarding house. Yeah.
In the Billy Joel song, right?
No one ever thought that Tom Hanks would be the star of that group. And then he did that movie called Bachelor Party. Yeah. Yeah. So for him to be funny, excuse me, I choked on Tom Hanks.
Happens to the best of us.
I'll have to ask his wife about that later. But anyway, Yeah, I see him as good. Now, I have a problem with your list as a critique.
Okay.
And it's with Tina Fey, because if you're a cast member, then I think, to me, I didn't put any cast members in my top 5 because they were cast members. To me,
Okay.
I want them to look, but I tried to get people that, and as I look at my list, I broke my own list because I said, well, I want to get people that are comedians, and I see 2 out of my 5 are comedians, but that's okay. What I based it on was when they hosted, how amazing was the show. And one kind of snuck up on me, and I'll talk about that one in a minute. Number 5, and I went way back, number 5 is really the first host that actually you felt like he was a member of the cast, and that's Buck Henry. I know you're saying who. Buck Henry was a writer. He wrote some movies. He was not a cast member, but when you go back and look at old Saturday Night Live, you'll swear that Buck Henry was a cast member. He wasn't. He was a host. But he was like the very first that people said, wow, that guy's actually not a part of the cast. And what he did with Samurai, Samurai whatever, he was always doing something with samurais.
Right.
And he did the perverted uncle thing, and he did all these other different little skits. He was really, really a pioneer as far as someone who you wouldn't expect to be as goofy as he was.
True. Yeah.
Number 4, you did expect big things, and he only hosted once as far as I know. But as I started thinking of shows, I came upon 2 or 3 skits from his show in particular that are, in my mind, are 2 or 3 of the best skits ever done. And because of that, I had to put him on my list, and that's Richard Pryor.
Okay, yeah.
Richard Pryor's on my list because of what he did on the show. His sketch, his word association sketch with Chevy Chase is my favorite all-time Saturday Night Live skit. Maybe one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen. And then you add on The Exorcist 2, where he attacks the girl when she starts talking about his mom. They'll talk about my mama. He starts jumping on her. Brilliant. And then he had like 5 minutes where he could do his stand-up, which was edited, of course, because it was on TV, but still as brilliant as ever. So I had to put him at number 4 because I just kept going back to those skits and some of the things he did on the show that I thought were really good. My number 3 is Alec Baldwin. He's withstood the test of time. I know he dearly loves doing it. I know he loves doing Trump right now. At the time when he started, no one thought this would come out of him, and it came out of him, and everyone kind of looked at each other. Kind of like my mother used to talk about the old Airplane movies with Leslie Nielsen, because Leslie Nielsen to that point was a very serious actor. Yeah. And now he's doing this deadpan delivery, and Mom said to her it made her 10 times funnier because Leslie Nielsen's not supposed to do this. Well, to me, Alec Baldwin wasn't supposed to do this, and now here he is acting goofy and off the cuff. My number 2 is Justin Timberlake. I don't ever deny that I have a man crush on JT.
Who doesn't?
And when he's on the show, he is absolutely brilliant from start to finish. He's fearless.
Yep.
I know the story about the song about being in a box. They brought it to him, and he basically said to the guys on the Lonely Island, he said, look, if we're going to do this, let's do it. Let's make it a real good song. And if you think about the songs that they've done on those videos, they're pretty daggone good songs. If you just listen to the music and you listen, wow, that's a really good song. And I guess he did that with D in a Box. He said, hey, listen, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. And he brought him in, he mixed it, he got background vocals, really got into it. And so that's just an indication to me. He's fearless. I know when he did a sketch, one of my favorite sketches was the coming across to America, and everybody was their great-great-grandparent.
Yes.
And he mentioned Britney Spears, and they had dated early, when they were little kids on Disney and Mickey Mouse Club. And he looks at the camera and says, he hit it. And and then he rolls his eyes like, I can't believe I just said that. And that was maybe one of the best moments in Saturday Night Live was him looking at the camera and going, even though he hit it.
Him and Sandberg.
Yeah. Yes. And then my number 1, this is personal. I had all his albums. Every summer I would just sit and listen to his albums and memorize all of his comedy albums, all of his routines. He's a true Renaissance man in every way, shape of the word. Steve Martin is above and beyond one of the most brilliant men in our generation, let alone the fact he hosts Saturday Night Live. His ability to just go with whatever they go with. The whole time when he came back on in the 80s and they sang the whole I'm not going to phone it in tonight is brilliant.
Yeah.
The whole idea that I'm not going to phone it in tonight, I'm going to say my lines and all. That was awesome. So that's a little personal for me, but Steve Martin will always be my number one host. Of course, he's hosted how many different decades? I mean, he's one of the first. He's been one of the most recent. Just unbelievable. 15 times hosting, and can't wait for him to host again. And one of my favorite times of his was recent when he wasn't the host, but he was a musical guest, and he had that band that he plays with. He plays a brilliant banjo.
Yes, he does.
And he came out and he played, and I kept waiting for the shoe to drop. He's going to do something funny. He didn't. He came out and they played, and he left. And people said when they saw him on tour with those guys, that's what happened. He would go out, they would play. He wouldn't make a lot of jokes. He might make a couple little clever comments, but it was basically to sit there and listen to the music the whole time. The guy is unbelievable, and he'll always be my number one. So who are some other surprisingly good hosts that maybe host a couple times that you remember, Joe?
Okay, so one of them that I had on mine, and I don't know how many times he's hosted. I remember being surprisingly shocked a little bit. Not a big fan in terms of the movies that he's in. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I always think Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson does a pretty good job. He's on SNL.
He's brilliant on SNL. I agree.
Yeah. I think he's one of those kind of, I won't put him in the same caliber, of course, as JT, but I think he's game for just about anything. He'll do the voices. He'll do anything. One of the first skits I remember seeing him was, this is years ago. What was it? The Angry President? Was he Barack Obama?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And he turned into the Hulk or I started to put this guy on my list. I took him off because I had others that Ben Affleck doesn't do a horrible job.
No.
But here's what
good sport.
Here's a good sport, but here's what I'll say about him. I can't tell, honestly, and this is why I took him off my list. I can't tell if it's him or if it's the skits that the writing that's done for him.
Oh, good point.
Because most of the time he's not overly dramatic. He's not over the top, but then I can't. He's in some pretty funny skits, and I'm like, okay, well, is it him or is it the writing?
That's a good one. One of mine is who's only hosted once, and I'm not an Indianapolis Colts fan at all.
I knew it.
But
I knew you were going to say this.
Peyton Manning was brilliant. I just flat out say it. Peyton Manning was fantastic as a host, and I thought he was great. Christopher Walken is always a treat.
I also have him. So can I ask a question? I have a question that maybe you can answer because you're deep into the lore of SNL. I Googled this. I don't know how Robin Williams, being the improv genius that he was, I mean, the guy, he didn't know how to do improv. He ran on it, he just did it. I don't know how he didn't host more times.
He wasn't that good. I remember when he hosted, and we'll talk about that after the ones we wish would host, and we were going to kind of talk about some disappointing ones, but he's kind of on the disappointing list. He was actually on my disappointing list. Again, was it the writing? Was it him? That's hard to say. Maybe sometimes I think part of hosting, I think you just run into some luck, good or bad.
True.
With how comfortable the cast is at that point.
True.
You and I could probably go in and host with a crew that's been there 3 or 4 years, and they just, boom, they know what to do, and they just do it.
Right.
And then if you're there starting off, and they don't know what they're doing, and, so maybe you struggle. I'm not sure where he fell into that, but he's hosted before, and just that's been a disappointment. There's no question about him. Him being a disappointment.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know
that. Oh, speaking of disappointments, Joseph.
Yep.
I think my colon blow cereal is starting to work its magic.
Okay, buddy. Just bite down on something firm like a belt or a paperback novel and push.
Well, listen. Let's take a break and come back with the top 5 people who have never hosted that should, please.
In the meantime, Lamaze breathe.
Okay, I'm trying this. Oh, I've got to go. Oh, get the bucket. Get the bucket.
You are watching and listening to Saturday Night Review on the Nipso Productions YouTube channel.
Well, isn't that special?
So then she had to get the mop, and it's just a mess. I mean, I don't know what we're gonna do about it, but I know we got cleaners coming into it. Oh, we're back. Hey, listen, everybody, welcome back to the 3rd episode of your Saturday Night Review. And yes, thanks for asking. I do feel better. And now that is behind us, so to speak, let us discuss who we think should host Saturday Night Live. This would be people who've never hosted Saturday Night Live that we think should. And again, we turn to a January 4th, 2017 article published on Thrillist.com, written by Dan Jackson. It's called 15 People You Won't Believe Never Hosted Saturday Night Live. And they didn't have a list, but they chose some interesting people. And I thought some of the 5 interesting that have never hosted that were pretty good. And I don't know if they're on your list or not, and I'm sorry if they are. Tom Cruise, I thought was interesting. He's never hosted. Mm-hmm. Leonardo DiCaprio, never hosted. Interesting. Will Smith, never hosted Saturday Night Live. He could do the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Denzel Washington, never host. Susan Sarandon, never hosted. That's a pretty big list. Yeah. So what we try to do is come up with 5 people who we're pretty sure have never hosted. We hope have never hosted. And I'm pretty sure mine have never hosted. I kind of cheated on number 4, but I don't care. I cheated. And number 5, I was looking for people who aren't normally comedians, who aren't normally going to just fit right in, because I want to see what they're going to do in a different atmosphere, right? Like Justin Timberlake, like Lady Gaga, like Madonna, like Miley Cyrus. And I went with David Grohl at number 5. David Grohl, the lead singer for Foo Fighters, who has an amazing personality, who has a wonderful sense of humor. And funny. I don't know. I know he's been on the show a million times as musical guest. I know that he's played backup for Mick Jagger when Mick Jagger came on. I know he's played backup, I think, for Paul McCartney. They say they've been around the show a lot. I know that he would be able to in a heartbeat if Lauren asked him. David Grohl. I like to see what David Grohl could do in a sketch. Number 4, I cheated. And the reason I cheated is I didn't just pick one person. I picked an entire cast. And anyone from this cast, I would love to see host Saturday Night Live. And that is the cast from Walking Dead. Anybody from Walking Dead. Oh, I don't care. Man. It could be Andy Lincoln. It could be Norman Reedus. It could be, I don't care. Lauren Cohen. They all have movies out. They all are doing other things besides Walking Dead. I would love to see anyone from Walking Dead host Saturday Night Live. As popular as that show was or is or whatever, the fact that no one there is actually hosted, I found a little strange. I know the only thing I can think of is that their filming is the same time, so maybe that's the problem. I don't know. But I would love to see anyone. Preferably, if I had to pick somebody, I'd probably pick Andy Lincoln, because I think he has more of a film background too. Yeah. So they can pick more on his films and whatnot. Jeffrey Dean Morgan, I would love to see him. He also has done a lot of things. So anyone from Walking Dead is number 4. Number 3 is another favorite TV show of mine. That the lady from this TV show, she's been in every season, and she's been in a lot of films, a lot of good Academy Award nominated films. That's Sarah Paulson. Sarah Paulson from American Horror Story, who is brilliant on American Horror Story, and I've seen her 2 or 3 times on Jimmy Fallon when she's interviewed. She has a spectacular sense of humor, very quick, very good sense of humor. She's very funny. She was in, I saw her in 12 Years a Slave, which is an amazing movie.
So dramatic.
And she's in the movie recently that did the Washington Post. I don't know off the top of my head what it's called. She was in that. She's been in a lot of movies, not just American Horror Story. She's amazing. She's got an incredible sense of humor. I think it's a travesty she hasn't hosted yet. For number 2, I went to my files of Betty White files, and because Betty, obviously, Betty's done it, so we can't put Betty on. Yes, right. But there is one comedian from back growing up. My favorite variety show was the Carol Burnett show, and Carol she was on Jimmy Fallon. They did a skit together. Again, that same, no matter the age, that same quick sense of humor, the great timing. She still got it. And I would love to see her host a show that really she kind of preceded a little bit. Back in the early 70s, she did the variety show where they, would sing maybe one song, but mostly it was all about skits. And it was all about, being funny. And I would love to see her as kind of the grandmother of sketch comedy. Come on, the best sketch comedy show of all time. So Carol Burnett's my number 2. And my number 1 is also personal. Been a fan of his since way back. I bought the very first album he bought on album. You remember what albums are? You know what albums are?
I saw one in a movie, I think, or I heard of one.
It's like this vinyl round thing you put on a thing called a turntable, and you put like a needle on it. It makes noise. But anyway.
Oh, no, I haven't heard of that.
His first one I bought immediately. I used to listen to him on a radio show. He could be the musical guest and the regular guest. And again, he has a lot of experience. Weird Al Yankovic. How has Weird Al Yankovic never hosted Saturday Night Live?
You know what? That's a good point.
And he could be the musical guest. He could be in the skits. He could be, I mean, there's so much you could do with him. And now especially he's got a star on the walk last week. He has kind of officially halfway retired because they did their tour of where they just played original music. They didn't play the parodies. And they're done with that tour. So now he's going to take a break. He's going to, help his daughter grow up, and he's going to be a family man for a while. He's got some time. Why could Weird Al Yankovic not be? So he's my number one.
I'm going to be honest with you, man. That list, that's a pretty good list.
Thank you. All right, we're done. So no, you have a list too, though, don't you?
Well, not as good as that one, though. To be fair. Well, okay, so let me tell you how I approach my list. Because it sounds like you stayed up till 4:00 in the morning just looking up every actor and actress, and then seeing if they haven't. So I'll say this, man. I tried to diversify, and mine was basically based on the premise of, why not?
Why not?
Why not?
I love it. Why not?
But I also tried to include TV as well as film. Because again, sometimes either or can surprise you. You can be disappointed, you can be surprised, whatever. So number 5, don't know if you've heard of her. I chose Lauren Graham. So for all the ladies out there listening, Parenthood fans, Gilmore Girl fans, Lauren Graham, who in my opinion, started out on stage. She wasn't in an improv group, but she started out on stage at the beginning of her career and then went to television. She, in my opinion, with the writing that's done for her, she does have some pretty good comedic timing. Again, have I ever seen her do it in this arena? I haven't. But again, I'd kind of like to see her try it,
Oh, yeah, I know she is.
Yeah. Number 4, and this is the one I kind of alluded to earlier, who is maybe rumored to be on this season, possibly, but who knows? John Krasinski from The Office.
Oh, excellent pick.
John Krasinski.
Fantastic.
So if you're listening, you might think that, on The Office, he played the everyman character. I've seen him do dramatic work. He did his second directed film, A Quiet Place, this last year. He's a pretty talented guy overall.
He is. He actually, can I tell you a couple stories about him real quick?
Yeah.
Again, on Jimmy Fallon. He was on Jimmy Fallon after he did The Quiet Place. That's his wife, who's the main character.
Yes.
And what's her name?
Emily Blunt.
Emily Blunt, right.
Yeah.
So he went to England to see her, and they said, why are you coming? And he said, whatever. And he happened to mention to the guy that he was married to Emily Blunt. And he said he had his passbook, and he looked up from his passbook. He said, you married her. He's like, yes, I did. Okay, sir, whatever you say. But then in Quiet Place, when she's doing the birth scene, I guess, which is just this incredibly, she can't say anything. It's this intense, horribly intense scene, right?
Right.
And she's just, it's awfully intense, I guess. The minute the yell cut, he looks over to her, and she looks over to him and goes, so what are they having at the commissary for lunch today? Is it chicken? Is it chicken day? And they're like, oh my God. You've just been through the most intense acting in your life, and you're worried about lunch. So there's your John Krasinski stories. I love the one where the guy looked up and goes, you married her. Yes.
No, and here's what I will say. Emily Blunt directed. She was on SNL, and I thought she kind of crushed it.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Yeah.
I thought she did pretty good. So, yeah.
That's a great pick.
4 was Krasinski. 3, I went deep diving for this one, man, and I don't mean in a sexual way, although maybe. Stephen Colbert, and here's why I said Stephen Colbert.
Oh, yeah.
I want to say that he was with, was it the Groundlings in Chicago or the Groundlings in Chicago?
He was in the Groundlings,
or second, either it's that or Second City. So he started
also
out
in Chicago, I think. Yeah.
And of course, I remember watching him as a kid on Amy Sedaris' Strangers with Candy. I don't know if you remember that show.
Oh, I love that show. Yeah.
Yeah. And he always, he played an off character there. So, and now, of course, he's the host of, whatever David Letterman had, the David Letterman Show.
Yeah.
And so I think, dude, he's an incredibly witty, intelligent guy, and he knows smart humor. Yeah.
He did try out for SNL too. It didn't make it, but he did.
I was just about to say that. Yeah. I think he and Carell tried out.
Yes, they both did. Yeah.
They both did. Yeah. So that was my number 3 pick. Number 2. This is where I'm kind of getting into. All right, let's just try it. Number 2 was Nick Offerman from Parks and Rec.
Great pick.
Ron Swanson. And again, I watch Parks and Rec. I've seen him in other things, feature films. And he has like a theater background. I've read his biography, Paddle Your Own Canoe, which was amazing. But he has a pretty well-diverse background. He can do drama, he can do theater, he can do comedy. He's got comedic timing. I would like to see him host, my opinion.
Agreed. And an Amy Poehler cameo would obviously be in there somewhere.
Definitely, you know that. Warranted. Yeah.
So that's these are great picks. Yes. I agree.
Yeah. So here's where I feel that you won't agree with my number one. It's, well, I was going to joke and say it was Bon Jovi, but not Bon Jovi. I mean, Bon Jovi, the whole band, like Richie Sambora and everyone else, but that's a joke. Number one, I kind of went on the scale of De Niro. And again, I personally think De Niro, not my favorite episodes with De Niro. Incredible actor, not a great SNL host. But I wanted to see what would Meryl Streep look like if she hosted SNL? But again, it could be disastrous. But again, I mean, the woman, everything she touches, it's flawless. So I almost feel like she would add something to that role, but I don't know. And again, you could sit there. Meryl Streep is like too easy. Like someone listening right now is going, well, that's an easy one, man. But I don't know. I still think she could pull off, some of these crazy, wacky characters. So that's my list.
Yeah. And you would think she would have hosted. It's funny because you think she would have hosted by now.
Right.
And she has not, as far as I can tell from records here. She has not. Some other people that have not hosted. Brad Pitt has never hosted.
I know. Yeah.
So here's another guy that, really, you should give him some props. I love the Meryl Streep pick. Julia Roberts.
Yes.
How she never hosted, and she hasn't. Maybe she done things. Sandra Bullock.
Sandy.
She had, but I guess she hasn't. She hasn't. I swear she would have.
She'd be good.
Yeah. So there are some people out there now, as far as disappointments, I think we talked about Robin Williams. I think Robin Williams was, I think
elaborate on that. Because I'm really intrigued by that.
It wasn't, I don't know if it was the skits. I think it was more what was written for him wasn't very funny. Maybe it's a case of him lending himself more to ad-libbing, where you're in a skit and you can't really ad-lib that much.
And sometimes, let's be fair, he did it all the time. And I will say that, he wasn't funny all the time. Sometimes he was over the top. Sometimes he was too much. Sometimes he was off point. He was sometimes erratic, but yeah. I can totally see what you're saying.
I think it just has, I think part of hosting is you have to be fearless. And I want them to be fearless. I want them to go out and make fun of themselves. And somebody we didn't talk about who was really good, I thought Britney Spears was really good.
Really?
Honestly, I thought she made sport of herself.
Okay.
She made fun of herself. She acted like part of the group, and she has that experience from the Mickey Mouse Club and all that. Yeah. So she's not like she's never done this before. I thought that she was really good. And when she hosted, I thought I would love to see her host again. I have no problem with Britney Spears hosting again. But people, you can make fun of yourself, and make fun of, your background, and you feel like they're just a cast member. And someone who would have, I don't even know if I want to say this. I'm not going to say it, so we'll just move on. But there are people that just, if you feel like they're a cast member, to me, that's a big deal. Jack Hamm is somebody we didn't talk about. But Jack Hamm from Mad Men. And they rave about him on Saturday Night Live because he'll let you do whatever you want to him.
Yes.
I'm here for you guys. You can put me in my underwear and make me dance across the stage. He doesn't care.
Right.
And they love that about him because he says, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. He doesn't have any, don't do this, don't do that.
Right.
I thought Mick Jagger's show was very good with Mick Jagger in it.
Oh, so when was that aired though? What are we talking about?
That was Kristen Wiig's last show, so it had been a couple years ago.
Yes.
They're all up there karaoke the Rolling Stones. And he's like, that's not how Mick Jagger acts, and it's it's really good, sporting himself. And the thing where he's done a couple times because he did back when Fallon did the whole mirror thing, pointing at him. And there's a lot. I thought Mick Jagger was very good. There have been a lot of surprises of hosting, and I love it when it's someone who's never done it. Recently, one that this last couple seasons, one of my favorites, and what I found out is going to be a person that should host a lot, is the girl who plays Wonder Woman.
Oh, Gal Gadot.
Yes, Gal Gadot is spectacular.
And you did say that, yeah.
Incredible sense of humor. Acted like a one of the cast members. Just, I thought she was fantastic. I thought she was amazing. She should come back every year if they could have her. Right now, recently, as far as recent people, Gal Gadot, Melissa McCarthy, you mentioned, there are a lot of really strong people to dig from. But I hope as the season comes up here that they not only dig from the old regular, what you would call sure bets, but they go out there and they do risk. They get a David Grohl, or they get a John Krasinski, or they get somebody that's never done it and say, okay, let's see what you can do with this. Because to me, that's my favorite Saturday Night Live show, is the one with someone who's never done it before, because I want to see what they can do.
Right.
So
wait, okay, so on the contrast of that, though, man, and I don't know if this is where you're going to segue into, the ones that I feel that they kind of take a chance on, but at the same time, you're thinking, what were they thinking? Like, I don't know how Charles Barkley has hosted twice, 3 times.
I agree with you.
As recently as 2013 or 16 or something, and it's like I've seen him twice, and he's never funny.
No,
he's terrible.
It's terrible. He's terrible.
But then, like you said, Peyton Manning, and I'm going to tell you right now, dude, and this might be a little bit biased because you know more about athletic sports than I do, and I have not, for the most part, with the exception of Peyton Manning, who crushed it, Dennis. I have not seen too many athletes who I've seen and like took it to that level like he did.
No, they're not. George Steinbrenner was awful.
Oh, Steinbrenner, yeah, like the 91, right?
Frank Zappa was terrible. Nancy Kerrigan was awful. This one she were after.
Yep.
Rudy Giuliani. They've had so many terrible hosts. And Justin Bieber wasn't that great either when he was on. He was okay, but he really wasn't that great. There've just been really, really bad ones.
Yeah. So, but I mean, again, you've got what? How many episodes are they filling? 18 to 20 or something like that?
Yeah.
So I'm sure they're fully aware of the fact that like they're going to get some duds, and like out of those 18, 7 maybe are going to like really, really do it.
Yeah. And just I like what at least they try different people. Yeah, Paris Hilton. Oh my God, Paris Hilton. Yeah. So, but yeah, I like that they just try different people. You said they know they're gonna get some duds, but you never know unless you try, and that's the thing. You may try and you may be surprised. You may get a Justin Timberlake, or you may get a one of those people that we loved that we didn't think would work out. So yeah. So anyway, do you hear that?
I don't hear anything.
Okay. Well, trust me, the dad is playing us out. We still have a little time here, but man, this is a lot of fun. And this is a lot of fun.
This is such a great time. And so to the 30 people who might be listening, or to the 10 that have dropped off since the beginning of the episode, like, this is so much fun.
It is fun to talk about this show. We hope that you join us in this discussion. We don't ever want to say, well, it's just us putting on a show and you sit and listen. Make your comments. We hope that you enjoyed, whoever's out there enjoyed listening and thinking about Saturday Night Live. Let us know your thoughts. We really are looking forward to our next show, which will actually talk about an actual Saturday Night Live show. That'll be after September 29th. So be looking for that the first week of October. Let us know your thoughts on this show and other shows. We look forward to another fine episode of Saturday Night Review real soon. But until then, he's still Joseph.
And he's still Dennis.
And we are out of here.